Hello, hello, everyone. Happy African Women's Day. My name is Carla Neto, and I am a community programs manager with Women's Habitat of Etobicoke. Welcome to this wonderful day, this exciting celebration of African heritage, culture, and of course, African women. Before we proceed, I would like to acknowledge the lands. As we gather together virtually today, please think about the traditional lands you are currently situated. And if you are joining us from Canada, please do so. Women's Habitat is situated on traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations, the Wendake Niom Wensio, the Anishinaabe Waki, and the Haudenosaunee. Please join us in acknowledging and thanking the generations of Indigenous peoples who have cared for these lands, and in celebrating the continued strength and spirit of Indigenous peoples. As we gather to celebrate and discuss African women, let us commit to the ongoing work to make the promise of truth and reconciliation real in our communities, and in particular, to bring justice for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls across Canada. We take this opportunity to recognize that many of us came here as settlers, immigrants, newcomers in this generation or generations past. We also acknowledge the African descendants who came here involuntarily, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. And in so, we honor and pay tribute to our African ancestors. I would like to introduce to you Dayo Kefense, who brings us greetings from our board of directors.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for participating in this event, a first for Women's Habitat. I was just chatting with Carla, who's done such an amazing job of pulling this event together. And as much as I've been living in Canada for all of my years, except for when I was in Barbados, when I was doing my studies, I never knew that there was an African Women's Day event, or that there was a day for African women. And it's really exciting that we're doing this event on a day that we are just on the cusp of celebrating Emancipation Day in Canada, which is a first also for this country. So I think Carla and the team that she's brought together is definitely thinking ahead about what we need to be thinking about, what we should be talking about as a community and as women who are part of this organization. As a member of this board, and I've been on the board for almost 6 years, I'm actually wrapping my time up this year. I'm really excited and pleased that we are doing an event like this, because it's important to recognize all women and all of their facets, all of their needs. But sometimes we should also be looking specifically at issues for particular reasons, to learn, to understand, and to better represent what's happening in our country. And this is an opportunity to do that. So on behalf of our board, I want to thank Carla and the team. I want to thank the staff, management, all volunteers who have done what they can to pull this event together today to help us all learn more about the needs of African women and how we can better support African women who are going through different issues that we all know are very important to us. Thank you so much, and have a fantastic event.
Thank you, Dayo. Thank you so much. At Women's Habitat, our vision is that all women have choice and opportunity to live their lives in dignity, with equal access to economic and social opportunities and freedom from violence. Okay, so our mission is to provide a safe refuge, counseling, supports, and advocacy for women and their children who are fleeing violence, while also working towards a more equal society where the inherent value of all women is recognized and celebrated. So it's really befitting that we are doing this today. We are celebrating African women. So our values include equality, of course, equality of opportunity, advocacy, safety, accountability, and diversity. Whoa, so why are we here today? Well, as Dayo said, in 1962, the former Organization of African Unity, which is today African Union, decided that July 31st would be designated as African Women's Day. And this happened, like I said, in 62 in Tanzania. So there are 55 members in the African Union, and the headquarters of African Union is in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. And I think it's really critical that we have this information, and as Africans, and not Africans in the continent, in the diaspora, but also as citizens of the world, it's important for us to have this information. So although we are gathered here virtually, we are in for a treat today. So we have a very rich agenda. I'm not going to waste a lot of time, but we will be looking at the aspirations that the African Union has set for their agenda of 2063. And because, you know, as Africans roll this way, there wouldn't be a celebration if we didn't at least talk about food, right? If we were in person, we would be having music and food and dressed to the teeth. By the way, I want to thank Abiola, the fashion designer of Precious Threads, who is dressing me today. So we would be having all of that. So we'll be looking at African fashion. We'll be talking about how do we connect with our African identity? How do we rescue our African ancestry and heritage? And we'll be doing that through looking at art, but also through talking about women empowerment, development, and equity, gender equity issues. Okay, so let's look at the aspirations. What are those aspirations? If we can have the aspirations, please, on the African Union has 7 aspirations, and these aspirations have each one of them several goals, but I'll go over very quickly the African aspiration. There are 7. So number 1 is that a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. That's number 1. Number 2 is an integrated continent, politically united based on the ideals of Pan-Africanism and the vision of Africans' Renaissance. Number 3 is an Africa of good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law. Number 4 is a peaceful and secure Africa. Number 5, which you see on the screen, is one of the areas we're going to focus, is an Africa with a strong cultural identity, common heritage, values, and ethics. And number 6, which is very connected to the reason why we're celebrating today, is an Africa whose development is people-driven, relying on the potential of African people, especially its women and youth, and caring for children. And I'll just mention number 5, Africa as a strong, united, resilient, and influential global player and partner. These are the aspirations that we in the African Union have set for ourselves. And one of the things that I think is critical for us to do is to define things for ourselves and control our own narrative. And so one of the ways to do that is for Africa media, right? Africa media to play a role in how we tell our stories, because much of what is known here in the West about Africa is never through our lens. And so I find that very critical for those of us in the media, whether you are in the continent or you are in the diaspora, for us to play a critical role in defining who we are, but also in telling others who we are. And so I would like to introduce to you Patricia Bebia on video, who wasn't able to be with us, but has sent her message.
Patricia Bebia Mawa has served as president of Planet Africa Group, the executive vice president of Afro Global Television and Silver Trust Media, the largest Black-owned media organization in Canada. She is also the host of the Planet Africa show on Omni TV. She has directed and produced over 15 television programs, including the Oma Bella drama series and Standing Ovation. Patricia is the associate publisher of Excellence, Envision, and Destiny magazines. In 2008, Silver Trust Media introduced the Discover magazine series which has since released over 20 titles and editions in various countries. Listed in the Who's Who in Black Canada, she is a recipient of the York Regional Police Civic Leadership Award, the Martin Luther King Dreamkeeper Award, and a Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. The mother of four is the co-founder of the Crossover Mentorship Program, a youth empowerment initiative. Patricia was spotlighted as Woman of the Week in Women's Post and also featured on CNN International in a half-hour special with her husband Moses. In March 2016, the duo launched Afro Global Television, a 24-hour television channel that is on Rogers Cable, Bell 5, Eastlink, and TELUS across Canada. In 2018, Patricia and Moses co-authored the 150 Extraordinary Canadians Legacy book with a foreword by the Right Honorable Justin Trudeau.
I am glad to participate in the African Women's Day celebration. My name is Patricia Baby Amawa. Now, the Pan-African vision is for a peaceful and prosperous Africa that is run by its own citizens and people, that is run by a people that are willing to play big in the international arena. And I must say that as someone in the media, I do recognize the importance of our image and how we're perceived in the world, and the kinds of narratives that are out there about our people. It is important that every group is given an opportunity to be active participants in the creation, documentation, and in the laying of their legacy. For us as African people, it is unfortunate that there's every opportunity for distortion, misrepresentation, misinterpretation, and misleading information, which sometimes may be from a position of either bias or misunderstanding. We've heard the saying that unless the lion learns how to write, the story of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. It is, interesting that our forefathers passed on history and traditions through folklore. But what this meant is that we didn't have a written form of history. And that's where, an opportunity for exploiting our image and our stories and our history was actually presented. But today we do have an opportunity to fix all that. And that's why I'm very happy for the vision of this Pan-African vision and the vision of the AU, and even the new spirit of renaissance in the diaspora, the new awakening, where we now want to take our destinies in our own hands. And that's because we do now know that we actually can solve our own problems. We don't always have to look out for solutions to our problems. Our image is very important. Our brand as a people has been tainted with negativity. When you turn on television, here, in the Western part of the world, all you see is either war, poverty, disease, and all forms of negativity, corruption, just name it, all kinds of negative things. And what this does is that it affects us as a people. It leads to stereotyping, prejudice, and racism, and it also affects the self-esteem of our young people. Because who wants to identify with negativity? No one. So we have to make sure that not only are we telling our own stories, but that we own our own media platforms, because he that pays the piper detects the tune. Whoever is bringing the money is the one that's going to determine, the kinds of stories that, will be told and how the stories are told. They choose what they want to focus on. And until we actually have our own, movie studios, our own TV channels, our own news agencies, our own platforms and organizations that can actually represent us and tell our stories in the way that should be told, our image, our stories will continue to be exploited, to our disadvantage. And I do know that a lot of Black-owned media organizations will face a lot of challenges, especially economic challenges, because the mainstream corporations do not believe in our community. And unfortunately, sometimes we are not the most supportive of our own media organizations. So there's almost like a double jeopardy. This has to change. I mean, it is great to see that right now in Africa, there are a lot of big, organizations that have come up to support the movie industry, especially in Nollywood. We're seeing a lot of great films coming out. Every day when I switch on Netflix, I see a new, African movie, especially a Nollywood movie. And some of the movies are really great, and they're telling our stories from a balanced perspective, which is really awesome. So we're seeing the stories that have to do with war, poverty, but we're seeing some stories that are very elevating, stories that show you the true picture of who we are as a people, the fact that we're resilient, we're strong, and we're hardworking. The other day, a friend of mine watched a movie on Netflix, and I was like, "Oh, have you seen this movie on Netflix?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Was that shot in Nigeria?" I said, "Yes." And he was like, "Wow, there are a lot of big houses over there and the roads are really great." And was asking me, "Why don't we see these images on TV here?" Well, that's what I'm talking about. Our brand, there's almost like an agenda when our stories are being told. They tell our stories from a point of view that is not elevating, or sometimes with something positive, they actually always taint it with something negative. For instance, when Michael Jean became Governor General, I tell this story all the time. A couple of headlines from the mainstream organizations, from the mainstream media, really got me. One of them said, "From the ghettos of Port-au-Prince to Parliament Hill." I mean, this woman just became Governor General. What has the fact that she's from Haiti and there's a ghetto in Haiti, in Port-au-Prince? What does it have to do with her becoming Governor General? She didn't even grow up there. And then another one said, "Refugee becomes Governor General." Come on. But if you look at all the stories from the Black-owned media organizations, they were elevating. Canada gets its first Black Governor General, headlines like that. And imagine what that does for the self-esteem of our young people when they turn on TV, all they're seeing is crime, poverty, and all that. I mean, it cannot be what you do not see. So we have to make sure that we reclaim our image. We begin to tell balanced stories that shows the true picture. And we make sure that we correct all the misinformation, the misrepresentation, and the stories that have been told from a biased position. Until we do that, racism, stereotyping, prejudice, and the way that we're seen as a people, we will not be respected by the world if our image, our brand is tainted with negativity and with things that are not elevating. So I would like to encourage us as a community to support our media organizations, both in Africa and around the world, and to make sure that we invest. We own our own media platforms. We tell our own stories, and we tell our stories from a point of view that is reflective of our aspirations as a people, that tells of our strength. I mean, look at us. We overcame colonialism. We overcame slavery, and we're still here, and we have a great culture. We're wonderful people. Our women are strong and resilient. Our women are able to put food on the table. They're able to, create something out of nothing. I mean, I celebrate all African women out there as we're celebrating African, Women's Day. I use this opportunity to doff my hat off for all those women who are doing so much from almost nothing, who are creating miracles from little opportunities. Let's continue to do that. Let's continue to make sure that we stand strong, because I tell you, the future belongs to us, because we have a lot of untapped resources in Africa. We have a lot of opportunities to not just be great, but to redeem the world. I mean, the old African tradition of Ubuntu, of coming together, of sticking together, that is what the world needs right now, with all the hatred and negativity going on out there. So I wish you a great African Women's Day celebration. And let's continue to do whatever we can as a people. If we see something negative that's been put out in the media that's not representative of us, we need to speak out. We need to write to the producers who produce all these films that continue to put us down. We need to speak up and make sure that our voices are heard. Again, I'm so proud to be an African woman. I'm proud to be representing Africa in the diaspora and using our media platforms to tell our stories from a very balanced perspective that are elevating, inspiring, and showing the aspirations of us as a people and the dream of us, taking our own destinies in our own hands.
Well said, Patricia. We are so very proud of you as well. We do have to tell our stories. We do have to own our own narratives. Well, let me take a few minutes just to share with you all some of the services that we provide here at Women's Habitat. So we have two main services. We have a shelter for women and their dependents, and we have an outreach center. Our shelter opened in 1978, so we've been around for quite a while in South Etobicoke. It is a 25-bed shelter, so we have space for 10 adult women and 15 children and youth. We provide, of course, safe refuge, safety assessments and safety plannings because it's critical, needs assessments and goal planning. So often women come to us needing supports around housing, education, healthcare, childcare, legal, employment, you have you. Due to the demand, because our shelter can only take 10 adult women, we saw that there was a huge need in the community and beyond Etobicoke. So we opened in 2006 our center here, the Outreach Center. And here we provide individual, group, and group counseling for children, youth, and adult women. We have housing and transitional referrals and supports. We have parenting programs, children and youth programs, skill building programs with sustainable livelihood models, because we have to think about, when we think about empowerment, we need to equate that with sustainability. And the way we deliver our services or the way we operate from a client-centered, trauma-informed practice, harm reduction approach, anti-racist and anti-oppressive. So these are the models that we use. And of course, like I said before, it's not an African celebration if there is no food. And I'm so sorry that you cannot enjoy the food in person, but I will invite you to learn about a recipe that is from Angola. We have the pleasure of learning with Pancha Panzo, an Angolan who was very happy to share her talents with us.
Happy African Women's Day. My name is Pancha Panzo. I am from Angola, and I'm here to share with you a recipe that is dear to me and to my culture. I enjoy being in the kitchen and just cook for my family and friends. And I like to watch them devour my food, you know. I just feel happy when I'm in the kitchen. So I would like to just present to you today. This is a very traditional food from Angola. Today I'm going to make mwamba. What is mwamba? In English, we can call it booster with palm oil powder. To make the mwamba, we need a chicken. And normally we buy the roasted chicken because even back home, we normally use the booster, not those from the farm. It's like almost like a stew, you know, if you see it, it looks like a stew, the English way of saying it. What we normally need is, it depends on the size of the family. It's a big family, you normally buy a rooster. Especially here, when we buy a rooster, it's a big rooster. So if we just for a few people, you just have to do half of it. And this is what I'm gonna use today. I'm gonna use half of the rooster, medium rooster. And I'm gonna use okra. I have garlic. I have, we call it jingungo, but here is piri piri, bay leaves. We also have onion, eggplant, tomato, all-purpose seasoning also. If you need extra garlic, like me, I love so much garlic. Sometimes I also add some of the powdered garlic and some of the onion, powdered onion also for the rooster sauce. So I'm using a medium rooster, half a pound of okra, but you can use as much as you like, 4 medium tomatoes, 1 large eggplant. I normally peel it, but if you don't want to peel it, you don't need to peel it. I also have a large onion. Now for the seasoning, I normally use the salt. In my house, I like to use Himalaya salt, but you can use any type. I use garlic again, 1 tablespoon of all purpose spices. I also use black pepper, and then I also use the palm oil bulb. So this is the kind I can get it from the African store, you can get anywhere. Sometimes I go ahead and use my African way. So I just hold some of the garlic, I put salt on it. I might put 1 bay leaf, and sometimes I even put 1 of the hot pepper, but so I just pound it, make it a paste, and mix it on the chicken. So this is also the black pepper. I put the black pepper. I wash my chicken. I always have to wash it. I know that many people don't like to wash it, but I like to wash it. Put the seasoning in, leave it for, mix it with my hand or with a spoon. I add this all-purpose seasoning. So just pound it, put it all together, and leave it for at least 3 hours, 2 hours, just to get that taste. What I do normally, I just keep it overnight. I put it in the fridge, and the next day, this is when the next day, the next day, so I just put the onion. This is the way I chop the onion. I put the bay leaf also, and I let it, cook for at least half an hour or so, because the chicken is a hard chicken, so it's a roasted chicken. The meat is hard. Then I add the tomato. I don't even buy the fresh one. 1 can or half a can, I put it depending on the amount of the chicken. After maybe half an hour, the meat cooking. So I add all this together with the tomato, with the eggplant, and I add the palm oil. It looks almost like this. It's like a pork. It's when they extract the oil from the palm or the fruit, and they give that thickness to the sauce. So I leave it cook for a while. And when the thickness is coming about, when you try the salt and you see if the seasoning is okay, salt is fine. So you add the okra. You wash the okra and the cut ends. This is what it is. You can see that the thickness is already here. I tried, and I like also the salt is okay. And I'm gonna put all the okra and probably just let it cook for another maybe 10 minutes so that the heat goes to the okra also. I like the green, I don't like when the okra is all brown. So that's why I put at the end. In Angola, we normally eat pirão. which is made of corn flour, or funge, or we call it funge made of cassava flour. Or in Angola, we call funge, but if you go to other parts of Africa, they might just call fufu. There's so many different names, but at the end of the day, if you see in a plate, it looks all similar. We call it moelele when you mix the corn flour with the water to cook, and then since I like to eat the mixed one, I put the cassava flour. I'm gonna do it Canadian way, so I need to use a whisker because I don't want the pebbles to show up. You know, it's not a plate that I cook every day anymore. And it needs a little bit of practice. So what I do, I just start it like this. And now, this is from Angola. We use the mocharico. This is what we call. It depends on where you come from in Angola. Some people like it very soft, the other ones like a little bit harder. And because I add a little bit of the corn flour, it gets harder. As they cool it, it's gonna get harder. Okay, it's done. And then you transfer that to a plate. So this pot is so small. Beautiful. Yeah, nice. We don't just eat the chicken and the funge or the fufu for the other nations. We also add some beans that we cook with palm oil. I soak it during through the night. Next day I cook it and add the palm oil. So I just put in the beans with the water. It's just been palm oil, water, and salt. This we normally eat with the fufu, with the chicken. When you're not eating with the chicken or something, you just eat it like that. In my culture in Angola, we sometimes eat it with a nice ripe banana also. It's a nice meal for us. You know, if you don't want to eat the meat, you can always just eat like that. As we don't let the food get into waste, this is, as I told you about the fufu, the cassava flour. So this is the root of the cassava. We ferment it in water and then we dry it and it transforms itself in flour. And this is what we use to make fufu. The cassava tree or the cassava plant has also some leaves. And we also eat the leaves. We just cook and use all the spices that I already used for the chicken. And I like to use the palm oil pulp. So this is also part of the funge that we call funge. There is no meal without a good dessert. This is a dish that we call matete. It's made of corn. Normally it's white or yellow corn, we use both. What I did, I soak it in the water. I cook it just with water. I add coconut milk, grated coconut, the coconut powder milk. Powder milk or condensed milk to make it sweeter. Or you can use the sugar or honey as you wish. You know, just for the taste, I add a little bit of nutmeg and let it cook until the thickness was, you know, as almost like a rice pudding, but we call it matete. It's a very traditional That's the matete. I just had a little bit of cinnamon to make it look a little bit more, beautiful.
This is amazing. Like you said it before, food is such an important component of one's cultural identity. And for us from Angola, this is one of the dishes that we really love for the Kimbundu people.
Yes.
But I wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the importance of food.
Yes.
As you know, during the pandemic, food insecurity rose. And at Women's Habitat, we make sure that the families that we serve have food. And so this is an opportunity for all those that are watching us or that are here in this celebration as we celebrate African Women's Day together today, that if you'd like to support Women's Habitat in our food program, this is a perfect opportunity for you to do so. You can donate non-perishable items. Hey, why not non-perishable African food items?
Yes.
So we invite you to support our program, support the families that we serve, and enjoy this beautiful recipe. You can try it, you can watch the video after, and then let us know how did it go. So thank you so very much,
No
Pasha.
problem.
This is amazing. I can't
Thank
wait
you.
to dig in.
Yeah.
Something is missing, and you know
Oh my
what I
goodness.
like,
Yes.
right? Listen,
The red pepper.
a true African, I cannot eat without this. Some people call it habanero, Scotch bonnet. In our language, well,
Yeah.
and we call it kahombo.
Mhm.
Okay, so I can't eat anything without my kahombo pepper. Okay, so thank you so very much.
No
And
problem.
well,
No
actually,
problem.
since I have you here, we will be having a program that is called Cooking with Confidence.
Oh
And
my
guess
goodness.
what? Pancha Panzo is one of the chefs
Yes.
who's going to be
I'm looking
cooking.
forward for that. I'm here. I would like to just help women on how to do simple and fast foods that they can just from with vegetables and simple things that they have in the fridge. They don't need to go and be a master to cook. You just have to follow some steps, and you have a great meal for you and for your children.
Cooking on a budget, cooking with confidence.
With confidence, yes.
Yeah, this is amazing.
I like I said, I can just give me the ingredients. I can do anything. I don't even need to prep because you need to know just the main little things to add to the food.
Well, but you are an expert in this, so and usually Pancha doesn't only look at nutrition; she looks at overall wellness. And so in the program that we are going to be hosting very, very soon, Pancha will also be talking about what you wear in your skin. Okay, stay tuned. Happy African Women's Day.
Happy African Women's Day to you all women. I love you.
Thank you, Pancha. It was delicious, I have to say. I feel really bad that you didn't have an opportunity to taste it. It was delicious. Thank you so very much. Okay, so now remember the aspirations, the African Union aspirations. So aspiration number 6 really focuses on African women. And the union has set very, very ambitious goals to ensure that the aspiration number 6 flourishes. And so let's take a look at what is happening in the continent, what is happening at African Union when it comes to women, gender equity and development. Let's see what the work, where the work is at.
African women have been called a powerful, untapped economic force. And Africa's Aspiration 6 of Agenda 2063 emphasizes the need to include African women in all aspects of the continent's development in order to achieve our goal for gender equality and parity by strengthening the role of women in all spheres of life, political, economic, and social, as well as eliminating all forms of discrimination and violence against women and girls. The African Union recognizes that gender equality is a fundamental human right and an integral part of regional integration, economic growth, and social development, and that Africa will only achieve the ambitions laid out in Agenda 2063 if the lot of girls and women on the continent is attended to. This is not only stated as a mandate of the Union in the Constitutive Act, but reinforced in the Solemn Declaration on Gender Equality in Africa and several human rights treaties, such as the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Women in Africa, which requires African countries to combat all forms of discrimination against women through appropriate legislative measures, and the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. The voice of African women is represented as the highest level of the African Union, with the issues of women being placed at the forefront within the office of the chairperson of the African Union Commission. Through the Women, Gender and Development Directorate, which is the department at the forefront of leading, guiding and advocating for the inclusion of women and girls in all spheres of African society. The Directorate implements its activities through two divisions: the Gender Policy and Development Division and the Gender Coordination and Outreach Division. Through these divisions, the department focuses on issues affecting women, such as poverty reduction, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, agriculture and food security, women's health, maternal mortality, and HIV/AIDS. Education, science and technology, impact of environment and climate change, peace and security, violence against women, governance and legal protection, financial inclusion, advocating for youth, and placing women in decision-making positions in both private and public sector.
We are responsible for integrating gender equality and women's empowerment in all the work of the Union, and in particular the African Union as an organ, but also other organs like the Pan-African Parliament, the Court, and all the organs. And of course, working with the RECs, which is very critical because the RECs are somewhere strategically placed in between the Union and its citizens. And of course, we cannot leave out member states, because that's where a lot of issues concerning women's empowerment and gender equality are taking place. And that's where change, is particularly required. Over the years, we have seen a lot of progress being made in the promulgation of laws, development of policies that promote women's rights or gender equality and women's empowerment. We have very progressive and comprehensive and really groundbreaking pieces of laws, but there's still a huge deficit between promulgation and implementation. And this is where we come in again as the Women, Gender and Development Directorate. We have also seen over the years achievement in the institutions, governmental institutions, whose mandates are to protect and to promote women's rights and gender equality and women's empowerment. We have seen, for example, a number of ministries who are mandated specifically to work on women's issues or gender issues. We have seen the establishment of specific national human rights institutions like gender commissions. We have a few of them in a number of African Union member states, like in Uganda, we have in South Africa and many others. It is very important for us to speak and to make a call to the 13 member states that have not ratified Maputo Protocol, to do so in this year, 2020. And this is important because in 2010, when member states declared 2010 to 2020 as the African Women's Decade and focusing much more on grassroots development, they committed that by 2020, there will be universal ratification, universal implementation, and universal domestication of Maputo Protocol. So we'll really look forward to seeing many more member states coming into the party and ratifying Maputo Protocol. And those who have ratified actually taking a step further and domesticating Maputo Protocol through their courts, through legislation, and then implementing Maputo Protocol as well. So the women and the young girls in the continent are able to benefit.
Well, there you have it. Like I said, very ambitious aspirations and goals, and they are very necessary. So I invite you to research and look at the African Union's website. There's a lot of information about what's happening, particularly what's happening with women. It will be very interesting for us to follow up on the work of the decade, 2010 to 2020, and to see how many of the countries have ratified the Maputo Protocol and to see where we are at and think about what can we do as African women in the diaspora? How do we contribute? So today we're going to be talking about these issues from aspirations 5 to 6. We have 3 amazing guest speakers who are going to share their perspectives on these issues. But my job is done for now. What I'm going to do now is introduce to you our lovely moderator, Yvonne Ben, an award-winning advocate and marketer for various African brands and initiatives in the industries of fashion, food, and lifestyle. This multifaceted Toronto-based influencer continues to play a major role in the uprise of African businesses in Canada. Yvonne founded the K-Scope while she was still completing her university education in Sudbury, Ontario, and has quickly turned the blog site into a one-stop shop for those with an appetite for news on the latest African fashion trends, African food, destinations, African entertainment, and entrepreneurs shaping the landmark of our community. Please, everyone, welcome Yvonne Ben.
Thank you, Kala. That was so great. I find it very enticing when I hear the bio. It's lovely. Thank you so much. And happy African Women's Day, everyone. It's a joy to be here and to moderate this conversation with a panel of trailblazing African women. I will start by introducing you to Abiola Akinsiku. Abiola Akinsiku is the award-winning 2017 and 2018 African Fashion Industry Award, as well as the 2021 Black Designers of Canada Award, head designer and creative director responsible for the designs of collections at Precious Threads by Abiola. She's actually the one who made this beautiful outfit I'm wearing. You can't see the full thing, but it's lovely, I promise you. She works passionately every day to build a brand that is indicative of her rich Nigerian culture and values. Abiola is inspired and attracted to architecture, structure, clean lines, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. She's passionate about giving back, and amongst her many hats, also teaches sewing skills to young women and girls at the Jean Augustine Center for Young Women's Empowerment. She has also partnered with Women's Habitat to raise funds for the purchase of machines to support the establishment of a sewing program she will facilitate called Sewing to Independence. I invite you all to watch a fashion show by Precious Threads by Abiola.
The sky. Oh my, it feels like I can fly. Great big world for Nigerian girl. You know what they say, if they say they're gonna leave, but you'll never take away from her. Inside her blood and the unending flow. They bring the light, they take the light. They go abroad for education. They come back home and start to flex. Oh, for the men's and the women's. I think, who do you think you are? Oh, it's all. Let us understand ourselves. We're not trying to play ourselves. Everybody's different. Yeah, we are all the same. And everybody's gifted. So make I enjoy my lane. Memories of playing tinkle as the sunshine through the moonlight. And the dreaming boy. It's just how to live. And the dreaming boy. It's just how to This is how I like to live. This is how I like to live. To live.
Amazing, 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 amazing. That was lovely. I love that. I'm going to welcome Abiola to join me on the stage. Hey, Abiola, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you? That brings back such memories, doesn't it?
It does. And I noticed that you were wearing this bow, from one of the collection. I was like, okay, look at her. Look at you. You look amazing. You look amazing.
Thank you. And our host is also wearing one of the pieces from that runway, Carla.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Look at all of us. We're rocking Precious Threads. And I love the name of your brand, Precious Threads. Like literally the threads are precious.
They really are. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I'm actually just going to ask you just one question, and it's just based off of the fashion. So in spite of colonization, one of our African cultural identities, as you know, many African societies have been able to preserve is the way we dress, right? In fact, like any other social and cultural identity, our dress code has in many ways made its way outside Africa. You know, African fashion to the world has been trending like, I don't know for how long. And can you just share your perspective on the influence that African fashion has on the world stage?
Absolutely. Wow. This is such a nuanced question, right? African fashion, I think there's no question, as you said, that African fashion has had a huge impact on the entire globe, right? Especially when you think about where we're coming from in terms of African fashion being relegated and being simplified to, oh, it's African print, it's tribal, it's exotic. It's really now expanded to be what it truly, truly is. You're seeing African fashion being worn on the biggest fashion stages across the world. You're seeing them at the biggest events across the world. You're seeing them in music videos. You're seeing them in films. You're seeing them all across social media. You are seeing them even on Western political figures. People are really embracing African fashion. On the runways, you've seen Ethiopian and Eritrean styles. You've seen the Shuta blanket of the Maasai tribe. I've seen Asoebi worn at the Golden Globes. There really is no place that our fashion hasn't touched. Our beadwear, even on runways, I don't know if you've seen any runways where they even have the basket. You know, back home in Nigeria, we have the baskets where we carry our fruit or our fabrics or things that we want to sell at the marketplace. Those are things that are now being seen every day in every place in all types of images. This is exciting for a lot of us, but it's also a cause of frustration at the same time, right? And in some cases, even anger. And these are really connected to this idea that our fashion, our culture, the very essence of who we are is being appropriated. And oftentimes, you know, when these things are taken, it's not always taken for the purposes of celebration. Oftentimes it's taken, it's renamed, and I'm sure we've seen the argument about box braids versus whatever, you know, they want to label things, right? They're being sort of renamed and they're being minimized. And oftentimes we see that they're taking our things, but not giving us those opportunities to be a part of that process. So you don't always see us behind or even in front of the cameras. You don't see our models in the African attire gracing the runway. Oftentimes it's put on other bodies, and those are the people that are gracing down the runway. And the other challenge as well is that you will see oftentimes that these things are being sold for thousands and thousands of dollars, while our people, you know, who are the actual foundational inspiration for these pieces of work are really struggling to just make it, right? People are not really turning their attention to those small designers. Instead, they're seeing the big ones, and that's where they want, because it's the label. Meanwhile, it's the same fabric. And oftentimes not with the same level of creativity, level of attention, level of detail that our smaller sort of designers actually apply. Now, having said all of that, we're also noticing increased exposure for our people, right? Because there's so much attention to who we are as a people and what we look like and what we wear and our hair and our makeup and all of these things, right? Exactly. All of these things are really being embraced across the world. And so it's an opportunity for us to be a part of that as well, right?
Exactly.
And you're seeing that from African artists on the continent that are now breaking into Western markets. And what I love is that they're breaking into Western markets unapologetically themselves, right? They're coming into these markets wearing our fashions, right? They're coming into these markets with our African beats. It is just who we are, just moved over to here, right? And so you're also seeing that now, similarly, large scale fashion platforms are happening on the continent. Arise happens to be one of them. And they are drawing Western celebrities to the continent to see African designers on an African stage with African models wearing African, right? Wearing those African garments. And so that is exciting to sort of see that, you know, there's that saying that I don't necessarily need to pull up a chair to your table. I'm going to build my own table. And that's what we're doing in the fashion world. We're building our own tables, right? And you're seeing platforms here in the Western world as well, African Fashion Week Toronto and a number of other other platforms across the country that are doing, you know, doing things big and really giving opportunities to African and Black designers that are not being given those opportunities elsewhere. And then I think lastly, what I'll say, and I'll say this from a personal place, that I'm super excited at, is just this acceptance to now show up in our everyday lives as ourselves, right? I work in the corporate space outside of the fashion world, and I show up like this. And I'm okay with that. You know, no longer do we have to leave a part of ourselves at the door in order to be embraced and accepted. I can show up with my hair out, with my African print bow tie, and still be just as fabulous and still be just as effective. And we're taking up space. We're taking up space just being ourselves. And I think it's super exciting. Lots to do, so much more to do. But I think we're taking those little steps. And I think as each and every one of us continue to embrace who we are, our, you know, our truest selves, not only internally, but externally, we walk out of our doors and we show up as we are, no matter where we happen to be. I think that we're now creating space for other people to embrace us the same way, if that makes sense. So that's kind of my perspective on your question. Thank you.
Girl, let me tell you something. I was listening to you and I was just smiling. I was smiling because this is just proof that we are moving. I like how Carla in the comments, she said, the African culture and heritage is being reclaimed, because I felt like there was like a movement, because people started like standing up and creating intentionally and then putting it forward like, listen, I have value. I have quality. This is it. I need you to put it out there because I am African and this is the African culture. And I loved, oh, sorry, please go ahead, sis, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say one thing. So for any of those aspiring designers that are watching us right now, or that will be watching this sort of on replay a little later, study. The way they study us, let's be honest, the way that they study African people and they're able to monetize our very existence, we can do the exact same. Study how they put their runways together, study how they do their photo shoots, study how they pick their models, study all of those pieces, add your unique twist to it. But why reinvent a wheel that's already moving? There's no point, right?
Yeah.
They've already done a lot of that work. Study them. If they didn't even ask permission to study us, so we don't need to ask permission to study them. Study and learn and be the absolute best that you can be. And it's okay if you're making mistakes along the way. Of course, it's going to happen in any passion you have. You'll falter a little bit along the way. But as long as you're learning and growing as you're doing that, I think that you will get one step closer to where that big dream of yours is. But study. That would be my advice, is absolutely pay attention and study. Yes, Carla.
I am so moved. One thing that you once you just said study, it just hit me, because the saying that knowledge is power just really applies here. The way when you know something, you're able to move, I would say effectively, when it comes to that thing. And I see you've been studying because I see you on these stages. I see you winning awards. So kudos to you for blazing the way. It's amazing to hear. And I told someone the other day that one of my friends, I said, you are selling to a completely different market, right? So you have to also sell with a completely different mindset. You need to understand that your mind needs to change. You need to unlearn a lot of things. You need to think differently. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. Abiola says, study, and then use the knowledge to build that stage. And then you said something about don't build something that's already available.
Yeah, don't reinvent the wheel. The wheel's already been built. It's moving. Just find where you can fit into that wheel. Take what you can learn and then just branch off. But don't rack your mind. Don't stress yourself out trying to. Quite frankly, there's nothing new under the sun. Let's be honest. There really isn't, right?
True.
So don't rack your brain. Don't stress yourself out trying to, start without any help. Oh, I can do this on my own. No, there's people out there who've been there, done that.
Yes.
Take what you can, add your unique flair, because that's all people are doing, is they're taking something that exists in the fashion world, adding their unique flair, and then putting that out. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong, but study. Watch all of these runways, study all of these designers that are inspired by us. If we cannot look within for that inspiration, which sometimes is hard, you get stuck sometimes. Look there, because their inspiration is us. So you can find that as well. But just study, pay attention, look, learn, take notes, add your unique spin, and then just take one step closer to where you need to be.
Wow, thank you. I am so happy this thing is being recorded, because I'm going to come back here and get this energy, because I feel like sometimes we get stuck in a little funk, and you just have to remind yourself, listen, you are great, you are victorious, and you can do this too. Before I let you go, Abiola, can you tell us where we can find your fashions? I mean, I know where to find you, but where can the rest of the world find you?
I would say the best place to find me is on social media or on my website. So on social media, you can find me at Precious Threads by Abiola, all one word. And on my website, my website is www.preciousthreads.ca. So you'll find some information there as well. Thank you so much. This was amazing.
No, thank you. And before I'll just call up the other guests, I'll just bid you farewell. Thank you for joining us, and then we'll see next time. And while I have a little bit more time before I call my next guest, I'm going to invite everyone to please put your questions in the Q&A box if you're joining us on Zoom. And if you're joining us on YouTube, go ahead and drop some questions there as well. And if you are here on Zoom, tell us where you're joining us from. Just tell us the city or the province, like where are you joining us from, the country. We would love to see where our audience is coming from. Our next guest, Sada says Toronto. Thank you, Sada, for commenting. I will introduce our next guest. Our next guest is Sharon Zarita. Let me introduce Sharon to you all. Sharon is a Kenyan. Sharon Zarita is, I have a number of screens open. Sorry about that. Sharon Zarita is a Kenyan arts administrator, sociocultural entrepreneur, and craft maker who is delighted when the arts are used to drive integration within communities. She holds a postgraduate certificate in arts administration from Humber College and currently works at Lakeshore Arts as the operations manager. Zarita is driven to enable accessibility in the arts and has founded Sequoia East Africa, an arts organization in Kenya supporting emerging craft artists and cultural workers to build sustainable careers through provision of affordable professional resources. The organization has produced the first East African Crafts and Culture magazine, which amplifies the stories and work of makers from the region internationally. Being a newcomer artist in Toronto, she uses social media to highlight the need for honorable representation of African societies in diaspora and advocates for fair relations in international creative and social trade. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Sharon Zarita. How are you, Sharon?
I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be here. It's the first gathering for African women or African celebration that I'm going.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I feel at home. I feel like home is just over here. I know we're on screen.
Listen, I feel the same thing. I feel like I am with you as well. You are doing amazing. Thank you for joining us and thank you for, sharing. I wanted to just start off by talking to you about one of the goals of the African Union is to have Africa's stolen culture, heritage and artifacts fully repatriated and safeguarded. So we're reclaiming a lot of these arts. How do you see this process happening? Because I feel like you've sort of built a platform where this is what you're encouraging, that not only would these artists be pushed forward, but they would be also, placed on a pedestal. They would be also, represented properly. How do you think that this process of getting back our culture and our stolen heritage would happen?
So I'm happy because this process has started already, or to some extent at least. The most recent one is for Nigerian artifacts, which Germany is set to repatriate in 2022. And I was so happy to hear of this news. But then Patricia, whose video we watched earlier, spoke a lot of what I already wanted to share, because we usually think that organizations like Women's Habitat or Etobicoke or the UN are the ones who have the responsibility to do this. But we as well, like the people who are here, especially the ones who are in the diaspora, we have the opportunity to start doing this as well. And so the representation, like who we are, like we've just been talking about who we are and what we stand for and our culture and our heritage, it is something that we have to embody while we are here, right? The governments or the policies, they'll make all of those things, but what about the people who are here? Not just about taking it back to the African continent, but it is making sure that while we exist in the diaspora, then it is brought out with a lot of honor. I want to talk about the one that, because I work with community arts, I want to talk about the one that is really close to my heart, because the usually production of, say, craft objects and handmade work that is coming from Africa. And I think it has also been mentioned before that it comes here and it is overpriced. And sometimes the makers of this work, then they don't get the full value of it, And so when that happens, I think our first responsibility is to call it out. We have so much power in saying no. I see on your Instagram the people who you're portraying as your makers, they're not living the same standards as the products that you're selling and at the price that you're selling. I literally saw this page on Instagram that they were making crochet beanie hats, and these beanie hats, two women were on the page. There was a woman from Africa who was making them, and the woman's child had not even been like, the child was playing, so the child had not even been prepared for this picture. And then there was the one who bought this beanie hat, and this woman's child was so happy and wearing it, you know. So there's this portrayal of it's always for charity, it is always going out to help poor African societies, you know. And that steals what our heritage is, you know, because sometimes we create just because we want to create. So for me today, mostly it's just an urge for all of us to just make sure that we take personal responsibility, especially those of us who are in the art industry, crafts industry, to be able to ensure that whenever we have an opportunity to make contracts and things like that, we ensure that African artifact, when it comes here, then it is sold honorably and it is also represented with honor.
Wow, you literally, you said the first thing you said was to call it out, to speak up against. We have so much power in our voices that we don't normally use it. I think because we've been conditioned to not speak up most times, but now we're realizing that we actually do have the power. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sharon. I was also gonna like literally talk about the, like you had already mentioned, like safeguarding the artifacts, and then also making sure that the representation of these crafts and these makers are good. You cannot always portray them as people who are, no, they are creating as well, and they love what they're doing. So they should be portrayed as creators, people who create. And I was gonna ask about now in here, like for those of us who are creating here, how do we safeguard the African art and the culture and the crafts that's based in the diaspora? What do you think would be considered safeguarding?
So I feel like this safeguarding whereby the normal things that either if it's trademark and all of that goes into place, but then there's also how it is displayed to the public, you know. Like people usually know that if I'm going to watch the orchestra, probably I have to dress up and things like that. So then African, whenever you are doing a project, like say a creative arts project, and you have this artifact, how are you presenting it to show the rest of the world or your audience? Then this is just not about, this is not just heritage. We created this because we just want to create, you know? We created this because it is our way of expression.
Yes.
So then it is very, very important to have that in mind. And this usually happens during the conceptualization stage, to have that in mind as a creative arts manager who's doing these events. But then as well, I'll go back to calling out. The woman in the UK, I'll just share a quick story. There's a woman in the UK, she runs an organization called Yoruba Stars. And so then she teaches, she started by teaching her children.
I heard of that.
Oh, perfect.
But I'll let you tell the story, go ahead.
So then this woman was going to trademark the word Yoruba Stars because it was gaining popularity among the young audiences that were coming. And then when she went to trademark, she was told, no, this has been taken. And she's like, no, you can't own Yoruba. How can you say that you're owning a culture? And she found out the organization that had done this, and the organization was like, you know what, we're going to transfer it to you at a fee. And she was like, no, you're not going to sell me my culture. You know, it is everything that happens. Like you're here abroad, yes, you have your, but then probably if you're giving it away for it to be vended or something of the sort, then it's going to be changed a little bit and it's going to be sold back to you more expensively and not even with honor. And then so the power of social media. So she tweeted, and after tweeting, African warriors, all of us. And so then the trademark was given away, but then right now they are doing a petition to make sure that these trademark policies are set in place, and I'll share this in later by the UK government. But you see, things like this, you know, being aware of how can I make sure, how do I have all the policies in place so that any loopholes are not going to, I'm not going to be found unawares, so that all of them are just filled and we're okay.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It is true. You have to be, and I think I'm going to go back to what Abiola mentioned. You have to be learning. You have to understand. You have to make sure that you're consistently, teaching yourself what exactly, what is my ownership? What do I actually own? What exactly is my right in this case? Because she could have probably said, oh, you know what, it's fine, somebody else already owns it. But she dug deeper. How do you actually I think what had happened was she was trying to trademark Yoruba, like, two words, but then someone had said you can't, because the way trademark works, you cannot trademark any part of a word, like your full word sentence or whatever you're looking to trademark cannot contain a word that's already trademarked. So she realized that the Yoruba word itself was trademarked, and I'm like, what in the so
And the part about education, or I think it was Abiola who said about how now we are able, when we occupy our spaces, we can be who we are and we don't feel like we have to have a facade. So even the company was called Timbuktu. And literally their mission statement was about Timbuktu is a place of nothingness. So making you, whatever we sell to you, you can make it as you like. And we're like, Timbuktu is a place in Mali. How can you come and tell us that Timbuktu is a place of nothingness, So then it's important that when we are here as African artists, especially, when you are occupying spaces, talk about where you're coming from, Like when you are invited to places where probably it is African-centered theme, make sure that there is that education and learning that is happening. But never, never, never at one point feel like you need to put a cover in it, because when you put a cover in it, then somebody else is going to use it and use it against us.
Wow, Sharon, thank you so much. And on that note of, talking about yourself, I would love for you to share about your different ventures, because I feel like you have a number of them. I feel like some of them are on the continent, and then you have one here as well. Tell us about your art, your craft, and then where we can find you, just to close off.
Okay. So I work at Lecture Arts, which is a community arts organization at Etobicoke, and that is where I met Carla. And then, so that is, I do arts administration at Lecture Arts, but then also I run a nonprofit at home in Kenya called Sequoia East Africa, as you have heard, and I'll share the links in the chat. And what we are doing, because I was a craft artist before I came here, what I decided to do was to transfer all of the knowledge back to learning, all of the knowledge that I had acquired here to the people who are in Kenya and are crafts makers. Because craft industry is one which is usually seen as a hobby and not something that can come up.
Be fruitful.
Exactly, you make money from it. So because I have learned that here, or I keep learning that here, what I do is I ensure that then we transfer this knowledge to the continent and it stays.
Yes.
So we've produced a magazine, and you can find it on ISU. We are very proud of it, because then we were able to work with the artists to teach them representation, to teach them the global stages. How are you able to take your work and then now present it in such a way that somebody else who's reading it elsewhere will be like, I want to work with you. And we've had successes because we've had an artist now working with somebody on a project in Texas. And so yeah, thank you. And I feel like this is such a blessing to be able to now make that shift happen. Yeah. For all of the links, I'm going to share them in the chat. And as well, I'm always open for us to have these conversations and to collaborate and to just continue making our creative arts industry blossom at home or even here.
Yes, yes, yes. Wow. Like, I don't know who else is feeling empowered right now from Sharon's talk. If you are, drop some comments. Would love to hear. And I wanted to just say, Sharon, thank you. Thank you for using your talent. Thank you for not only, keeping it for yourself, but for saying, listen, there is a community that I want to represent. And I not only want to represent them, but I want them to thrive as well. Thank you for thinking about the community as a whole. I just pray that anything that you do, all your works, just keeps thriving and you keep getting more success stories like the collaboration that you just mentioned. Thank you again. And then we will definitely be talking again. Thank you. And I'll be introducing our next guest. Perfect. Our next guest is Zayda Bastos. I'm going to read her bio. Zeta Bastos is an Angolan born with a long history and expertise in community development, gender equality, and organizational development, including participatory monitoring and evaluation. She has worked to support effective training and the integration of prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse policies and procedures. From 1981 to 1984, Ms. Bastos worked at UNESCO in Paris, and from 1978 to 1981, she worked with the United Nations Development Program in Angola. Ms. Bastos was the executive director of the Working Group on Refugee Resettlement, an economical agency funded by the Toronto Conference of the United Church of Canada and the Anglican Diocese of Toronto. Ms. Bastos has worked at Primates World Relief and Development Fund in several capacities, including the African Program Coordinator and External Funding Program Manager, and the Development Partnerships Program Director until December 2020 when she retired. She was awarded the 2020 Karen Tackett Award by Corporation Canada for Women's Leadership in International Development for her invaluable contribution to women's rights and social economic justice. Ms. Bastos is also a published writer under the maiden name of Zeta Benke. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite Ms. Zeta to do her opening remarks.
Thank you so very much. And I just want to begin by really thank Carla Neto and all the team that pulled together this wonderful day, and salute all the panelists that came before me. It was really insightful to see all the amazing things that are being done. And well, what a beautiful day to celebrate African Women's Day. Not only here in Canada, from several parts around the country, but most of all for our sisters that remain in the continent and continue to struggle to this day and achieve amazing things. I want to just give a bit of background on why the African Women's Day. This is part of Africa Union to really acknowledge and make this special day to celebrate all the contributions of women in the continent, and there is a lot that has been done, and women in Africa have been part of this struggle from day one, from times of colonization before that, and war for independence, and still today that the continent is fully independent. Women still or continue to be leaders in many of the spaces around the country. But we have to acknowledge that not everything has been success for women. And today, to take a bit of time to reflect on those issues is extremely important. So in February 2019, the Africa Union developed the Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment strategy. This strategy was launched on Africa Union Summit on February 2019. It's very inclusive and multi-sectoral approach and builds on lessons learned from the 2009 gender policy. I have to say that when you look at the strategy, it's really a transformational document. And because it aims to eliminate the major constraints that hinder gender equality and women's empowerment, so that women and girls may participate fully in the economic, political, and social life of their communities. This document is a framework, and it strengthens women's agency in Africa and ensure that women's voices are amplified are heard, their concerns are fully addressed through effective implementation of legislation, with the proper financing and gender equality work. It's a guiding document that governments around the continent, based on Maputo Protocol, are really embracing. So far, I think that 35 countries have endorsed the protocol, which is really good. But some of the things that this document really, as I said, is transformational, but at the same time, as someone that has been in the sector for more than 30 years and has worked in empowerment of women and girls at local level and international level, I really think that it's a skeleton, but needs a lot of the meat on the bones to make it relevant for the women in the small village, in the small community that doesn't live in big cities like Nairobi, Luanda, or Johannesburg, and still participate in this struggle of making their communities really a place to live where they have voices, where their destinies, or they have opportunities, so their destinies are different to ones of their mothers or grandmothers. So in looking at this document, I think that there are 4 areas that we still need to work and put efforts and advocate and speak up, because those areas are social determinants that allow a woman to really overcome poverty, to really find her voice, to really have a space of opportunities and grow. And the first one I would say is the basic needs of women. We know today that many women in Africa still have to go and fetch water every single day. Food security is not there. Their work is not properly remunerated. Sexual and reproductive health is not there. Women continue to not be assisted during pregnancy or delivery of their babies. Girls' education is still lacking. There are many girls that don't have access to education, either because they have to care. They are main caregivers at home, care for the sick, go and fetch water. And so their education is not there. Their opportunities are not there. But also to address the cultural practices that reinforce patriarchy in a very negative way that affect gender equality. So we need to continue to work on these areas. We need to continue to invest on these areas and speak about those things. And we need to, and our sisters in many areas around Africa are doing it. You know, there is a very good discussion happening in countries through women's organizations, where this commitment to the Africa Union gender equality and empowerment agenda sits on the government agenda. How, and I always say, you can have all the commitments that you want, but if your budget as a government doesn't reflect that, those commitments go nowhere. So it's important, the struggle of our sisters and our allies in lifting up the African equality, women's equality agenda is to really question how do the government's budget are reflecting these aspirational goals. Who is around the table when those budgets are drafted and priorities are set? And I often joke, but it's not a joke. It's the table needs to be a round table, not a square table, not a rectangular table. Needs to be a round table where we look at each other and we challenge each other. Because in a square table or a rectangular table, you might not see the people that is sitting at the corner. So we want round tables where the faces and voices of women are seen and heard. So this is extremely important. So when priorities are set, our voices are there. And then we need to have mechanisms that are in place, that those targets that are so aspirational are met, are achieved. And we need frameworks of accountability to ensure that they are met and achieved. So I really think that those issues are essential for the African women to continue to really contribute to the development of the country. I'm amazed to see the amazing women that on this panel and the wonderful things that they are doing. And I revert to an African proverb that really, to me, says it all. If you educate a man, you educate an individual. But if you educate a woman, you educate a nation. And this is where we need to continue to say to African governments from north to south, east to west, women need to be at the center of any decision you make if you want the continent to flourish, to really give all the potential that we know Africa has. For instance, it's so important to acknowledge that in the next 50 years, almost 1 person of every 4 in this world will come from Africa. So we are a powerhouse, economical, cultural, financial, and we need to create the stage to really do that. And I have done that through all my work on international development. I often find, which a lot of this life happens or happened in outside of my country of origin. But I always had the questions about the international aid, because it was my area of expertise. And the international aid, like what Canada says that invests in Africa, or other countries of Western countries, China, etc. Is it really beneficial or detrimental to Africa? And I always ask that, and even though I've been in the sector, I have been very critical of this international aid. Because the next question is, who sets the agenda? Is the donor or the recipient countries? Does this international aid respond to a genuine desire to address Africa's needs and aspirations? Or does this aid is a Western respond to a Western preset agenda that continues to favor the West? And I have just 2 examples that I want to share. One is the example of the Kenyan nurses that just happened last week. UK and Kenya have signed an agreement that 3,000 nurses formed in Kenya will be working to UK. Everyone is very happy and saying, oh, this is a great opportunity for the Kenyan nurses to go and work in UK. I really question, for instance, the World Health Organization says that Kenya has a critical shortage of health workers. I often think, look at the investment that Africans have made in training these 3,000 nurses. Kenyan mothers and fathers have gone without to allow their children to go to school, to have a professional training, etc. How many sacrifices? Now there are many villages, rural villages that would welcome to have a nurse on daily basis. Now this wealth, this brain drain is taken to UK. At what price? The other example that I have, for instance, is the one in Tanzania. In a year, I think was the year 2010, a Canadian gold company made $180 million of exploiting a global a gold mine in Tanzania. That same year, Canada gave 30 million of aid to Tanzania. But this Canadian company only paid 5 million in taxes. Now, who's helping who? And this is one of my constant questions, is really, does Africa need aid? And if needs aid in this transaction, who is really the beneficiary of this aid? So those are questions that I think that as we celebrate the African Women's Day, and we really are happy about the gender equality and women empowerment agenda, I think that as a continent, we need to continue to question these issues. We need to continue to be very critical of the way Africa is portrayed as the recipient of aid, as the country that, or the continent that takes, but at the end of the day, we give back so much. And I will stop here. Those were some of the things that I want us to reflect on.
Wow.
Amazing.
Wow. I had to invite Ms. Carla because Ms. Zeta, you were just blessing us. Thank you so much. A few things I took from that: we need to make sure that the right people are around when decisions are being made that would favor women. We have to make sure that the right people are in place, and also the round table. I saw the comments going crazy when you said that. Not square tables, but round tables, so that enough people can join the conversation. And then also educating women, then you educate a nation. Let us be for educating the nation as a whole. Thank you so much, Ms. Zeta Bastos. That was amazing. Such an great opening remark. Just a few. Oh, Ms. Carla, would you like to go ahead and
yes,
ask? Okay.
Zaida, thank you so very much. I think that conversations like this have to happen more often. We as African women in the continent or in the diaspora need to be having these conversations and letting our governments, African governments, know that we will set those frameworks of accountability for them if they don't exist. So I have one question for you. as you know, one of the very ambitious goal is that we'll have gender parity by 2025. And as much as this is critical to happen, I'm also trying to be realistic. Do you think we will have gender parity in the continent by 2025?
Well, I'm throwing the question to you, Carla. Does Canada has gender parity?
No. No. And so I think that, again, when I talk about accountability, we need to realize as citizens, but particularly as women, that we are powerful, that we have to hold our politicians, our governments in Canada or in the continent accountable. It's great to have great goals, but like Zaida said, what are the mechanisms for evaluating performance and outcomes?
Yeah.
Where are the mechanisms for compliance? Because we have how many countries who are sick. We have to find out what's happening with the Maputo Protocol.
Well, the Maputo Protocol has been signed for almost every country. I think that 49 countries have signed.
49?
Yes,
Pretty good.
35 have ratified.
Okay.
The thing about the protocol, and I followed closely all the protocol, because there were some programs that I was running at the time that really the protocol had some impact on these programs, and one of them being sexual and reproductive health. We don't speak enough of sexual and reproductive health in Africa, but is one of the essential areas that we need commitment from governments. Women need to have the ability to decide about their bodies, how many children I want, when do I want them? Do I want them? So those are things that the governments need to stop using women's body as political tools. And we need to reaffirm.
Yes, and strategies of war, because that's another area where women.
Precisely, you go to Congo and the women's body has been sacrificed for wars that we have not even been part of deciding. So those are things that are very relevant. But going back to your question, Carla, is yes, to sign a protocol is very nice. You have the politicians in a nice conference and sign, and that's it. It's put in a drawer and forgotten. What we need is a commitment, is a peer review mechanism that says, hey, Angola, you signed a protocol. After 5 years, where are your achievements in that area? So these are things that really we need to push for.
A report back card. We need that, and we need to make sure that I think it's wonderful to have a document that is filled with promise.
Yeah.
But we need to be realistic, and we need to have timelines that are also realistic. 2025,
it's
by any standards for any country, never mind a group of countries, a continent, right? It is around the corner. And
I would just say, if you are speaking of achieving gender parity, do you guarantee that by 2025 we'll have schools or universities in Africa will have the same numbers of girls and boys? Just that.
Exactly. And that is why we need to raise our voices, and we need to make sure that this song, we're not dancing to the song, right? We need to make sure. I think that we need to come back to this conversation very soon. I see in the chat, Joyce is asking a little bit more about the Maputo Protocol. We will get back to this topic on a different event. I think it's critical that we do in different platforms. It doesn't have to be hosted through Women's Habitat, but I think we need to get back to this conversation, and we need to let the African Union know that the diaspora is watching.
Yeah.
We're not just watching, we expect, they have aspirations, we have expectations,
Yeah.
right? And we need to do that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that in the work that we do here at Women's Habitat is that we want to ensure that women's capacity is built. We want to make sure that sustainability is a factor in the way we support. Again, it's not about giving people fish, it's about teaching people how to fish.
Yeah.
And so here's a proposal. We would like to start a fund for capacity building, for building the capacity of African women here in Toronto, or it could be even in Canada. I mean, now with the advent of the internet and the virtual this and virtual that, we can always meet. But I would like to see a fund for supporting women to build capacity. And this could be used for education, for training, entrepreneurship. We women have always figured things out. We've been the backbone of society since its inception. And to me, when I look at support and empowerment, the word empowerment is very critical. Yeah. I think it's overused. I think that every time I'm participating in someone's journey, I'm participating in someone's empowerment process. There's no empowerment if you're starving. There's no empowerment if you don't have a meaningful income. There is no empowerment if you don't have a meaningful job that you can, use to propel yourself to the next level and the next level. So we will be putting, I think it's already on the chat. If you'd like to donate to this fund, please visit us at our website. It's in the chat, www.womenshabitat.ca, how-to-help, and then /donate. We need to start setting up systems that make sense and that really, really will lead to meaningful outcomes. I want to see outcomes. I'm proud. I have to say I'm proud of the work that is being done so far, but it's not enough. It's not enough, and I will be keeping my eye. And I know, Zaida, you will be keeping your eye to see what's happening with the African Union. If anyone has any questions, please, you can put it on the chat. We are 10 minutes from ending our day, our celebration. I mean, it's been such a pleasure to hear from you, Zaida, Zarita, Sharon. Unfortunately, we don't have Abiola with us anymore, but just Yvonne, you've done such an amazing work moderating this conversation. I am so humbled and honored to be amongst us virtually. Please, let's continue the conversation. Anyone has any, I guess, closing remarks, anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I can go and say I'm so amazed at the work that has been done by you all. I want to celebrate you as women in diaspora and the great contribution that you do. I wanted to say to Zerita and Abiola that when I went to France back in the 80s, 1980, I went to France, and my daughter at the time had corn rolls, and someone said to her, "Oh, nice French braids." And I was like, I grew up with those braids all my life, and no one ever called them French braids. I come to France to be told that my corn rolls are French braids. But this is exactly the appropriation, the cultural appropriation that Africans face day in, day out. It's in music, it's in fashion, it's in culture, it's everywhere. And to see that the new generation is retaking the name, is reoccupying the space that belongs to me, is very, very heartwarming for these old women. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I want to also thank my colleagues here at Women's Habitat. Lina Almanzan has been so supportive of this event and many other events. I would like to thank Elizabeth Short, who is behind I would say behind the camera, behind the virtual stage, who has made this event possible as well. Thank our colleagues at Women's Habitat, our management colleagues, and our board, Dayo in particular, for coming in and bringing greetings. Zarita, I always don't call you Sharon, I go straight to Zarita. Zarita, any final remarks?
Thank you so much. I want to say thank you so much for creating this space. Like this morning, I was already excited to just put up my African wear and be like, it's an African event. But I was even more excited to walk into the room and see everyone looking like me. It's not something that you find often in Toronto. So I would, because you're in a place of influence and capacity, I would just like to encourage you to keep creating spaces like this where we can come and connect and keep nodding when everyone is speaking. You're like, yes, that's what I've been trying to say all through. And for the creative arts, I'd just like us to urge all of us, keep consuming African art when it is probably when events are being done here and people are coming from the continent or even from back home. Our music, our traditions, our food, our fabrics, if you can be able to bring them, just keep consuming African art and support the industry. Thank you.
Absolutely. See, you see that once the fashion show started, I went and I changed.
I saw.
in African fashion, that's how we are. Yes. You have to put your third outfit, and well, I have a third that Abiola supplied as well, but I'll keep it at this one, so that this one, I needed to show some of my Angolan ones too, otherwise my Angolan friends will be, what? You didn't wear the Angolan thing? So I'm wearing it. Thank you so very much, Yvonne, for participating and for facilitating the conversation. We always end with music, right? But before the music, I think that Elizabeth Short will take us to, I guess, an interlude before the end. Is that so, Lizzie? And so we are going to say thank you so very much.